Hey everyone, good morning. It's good to see you. So I've been introduced as a friend of Matt's from seminary, which is true, but if you want to understand the giggling over here, I'm also the parental unit to Nick and May. So I'm going to get mocked ceaselessly for most of today. I want to start off today though, when we think of Christmas, what do you think of? Tell me, what do you think of? Whether it's Christmas story, jingle bells. I'm a music teacher, so I've had a lot of jingle bells recently. From my 5th grade band, so it was more like, jingle bells, jingle bells. Yeah. Okay, what else? Jingle bells? Stress. Did I hear someone say stress? Yeah, that's fair. What was that? Presents. Yep, what else? Cousins. Yeah, my wife's got a lot of cousins. I'm from a little family. My wife is from a big family. What else? Lights. Anything else? Christmas tree. My in-laws cheated this year. They got one of those artificial ones that just all the lights are already on. And it's like colored lights, white lights, flashing lights. When I was little, I used to decorate like the most tackiest tree you could think of with tinsel and Snoopy ornaments and Thomas the Tank Engine ornaments. I miss the 90s sometimes. Okay, what else? Santa bringing the presents. Over here, I believe it's cookies and milk. In England, it's brandy and cookies. Santa's a little more robust in England. What else? Jesus. That's a good one. Finally, someone. I'm in a church service and it took that long to get to Jesus. The laughter tells us on there, generally our impression of Christmas is often positive things. Well, stress probably isn't positive. But generally our impression of Christmas is positive. And often when we think of especially the Christmas story, we tend to think of it in a very romanticized and positive way. And we think of kids doing Christmas pageants and Mary riding on the donkey and the angels and the shepherds and the good news being delivered and all of those things. However, sometimes we find the reality of the world we're in just collides with that story. We all know someone for whom Christmas is a really hard time. For me, this year, 2025 has been the year I never want to repeat. I would much rather go back to 2020 than be in 2025. It has been a horrendous year for me, including probably the worst day of my entire life. And that was only a couple of weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I think. And so I find myself coming into Christmas with a lot of questions about the world and hurt and pain. Luckily for us, the Christmas story is not ignorant of this. The Christmas story in our Bibles is not some romanticized, wonderful children's play. It really tackles some of the depths of humanity. So I want to go now to Matthew's version of the Christmas story. So often when we look at Christmas, we go to Luke, and there's angels, and there's songs, and there's shepherds, and all these wonderful things. We go to Matthew. He starts off in a very different place. And so this is Matthew chapter 2, verse 3. It begins like this. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. So Herod had just received the news that the king of the Jews had been born. This is a problem for Herod. He is the king of the Jews, except for one tiny little detail. He's not Jewish. He's actually Idumean, which was a country just south of Israel and what say kind of northern Arabian Peninsula. And he was a patsy put in place by the Roman governors. So here's Herod, who was a brutal, brutal king because he was so paranoid about his position as king of the Jews, even though he was not Jewish. And so when King Herod hears that there's a king of the Jews has been born, he was disturbed. Well, the word gets translated a few different ways here. It could mean he was afraid, he was disturbed, he was troubled, but we get the idea that he does not like this. And we get joined with this phrase, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, saying all Jerusalem doesn't necessarily mean every single person in Jerusalem. It might be like when something political goes down in this country and we say, DC has been turned upside down this week, or Washington is in chaos. We know we're not referring to every single person that lives in Washington, D.C. We're usually talking about the political elites there. And Jerusalem is the political center. It's a town about the size of Newburgh, 35-ish thousand people, that feasts and holy days grows to about 400,000 people. So it's bigger than the Salem metro area. And there are the high priests, the Roman governors. It's the political center. So Matthew starts off his Christmas story after telling Mary she's going to give birth to a child. Jesus is born, and we pan immediately to the political center, and everyone is disturbed, terrified, afraid, troubled. It's a problem for them. And we know that when power gets threatened, nothing good ever happens. Now, I want you to notice something here. God isn't doing anything in this verse. It's not God makes Herod troubled or afraid. No, God's done his thing. He's come as Jesus. The reaction of the people in power is what this verse focuses on. So he learns this from the wise men, and he gathers them to him. So here, a few verses later, in verse 7, he says this. Then Herod called the Magi secretly. Oh, we all love politicians doing things secretly, don't we? And when he found out from them the exact time the star had appeared, he sent them to Bethlehem, said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you found him, report to me that I too may go and worship him. Yes, that the non-Jew will go and worship the Messiah of the Jews who threatens his very position. Room to be suspicious. Anyway, the wise men go, they find Jesus, and they never go back. They never go back to Herod. Herod gets really mad at this. Jesus and his family run away to Egypt because of what's about to happen. It's in verse 16. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he'd learned from the Magi. So this is about 2 years after the birth of Jesus, so he goes, okay, just any kid 2 and under. And Matthew then puts in an interesting verse. He says this, a voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. And he says this, he kind of sets it up as this is something that's fulfilled in this action. So here we are in the middle of the Christmas story. We have a terrified king committing an atrocity, murdering. And we get this passage that talks about it. What's interesting about this text is this text has nothing to do with the prediction of a Messiah. It's not a prophecy about the coming of Jesus. It's the prophet Jeremiah talking about what will bring in the return from exile. Now, Jews had been wrestling for a long time about the fact that they had returned from exile, but they were no longer in control. They'd returned from Babylon, but the Seleucids muscle in, the Romans muscle in. All these different empires are in control. They'd never fully returned from exile. And Matthew kind of sets this up as this is the beginning of return from exile. And he uses this atrocious event to do it. So often our Christmas celebrations focus on joy and redemption. But the Christmas story itself does not shy away from the reality of pain and suffering. It's embedded in the story. And so today I want you to understand this, that we embrace Christmas more fully when we sit with the pain that's in the world. This pain becomes actually really important to the Christmas story and what it is about. Because it's about the incarnation. It's about God coming down to be with his people. This is God entering into pain and suffering. It's no coincidence that we get a story about God coming into the world and we get an experience of pain and suffering right away. God has come down to experience pain and suffering. This is what God's about. He hears pain and suffering all the time. Right back in Exodus chapter 3, why does he initiate the exodus from Egypt? He says, because I have heard my people's cries. And God responds to the pain and the suffering. Here's something that's really important in this whole story. God is responding to pain and suffering. He's not causing it. Sometimes we have a view of God that it's called meticulous providence, in which every tiny little thing that happens in the world, no matter how small, is totally and utterly dictated by God. If I was to flick a penny right now, God would be the one deciding which side it lands on. Might seem crazy, but some people hold that view of how God works. And the trouble is, in that view, everything that happens, even the worst and most horrendous things, God is the one to blame. That is not how the Bible sets things up. It's not how the Bible sets things up. In fact, there's huge chunks of the Bible where God does very little. If you read the Genesis narrative, there's a huge thing about Abraham and children and all of this. And for like 5 or 6 chapters, God appears in one verse. That one verse is, and God opened Sarah's womb. That's it. That's the only action he takes in like 5 or 6 chapters of Genesis. Here in the Christmas story, God is not the one initiating the atrocity. It's happening because there's something else in the world. There's sin, there's darkness, there's pain, there's suffering. The incarnation is God's response to that. And his temptation through his whole lifetime is this: to stop experiencing it as a human. Pick up his power and escape the pain and suffering. So the devil says, turn these stones to bread and you won't know hunger like humans know hunger. You won't know that pain and suffering. Right through to on the cross, the jeer is, if you're God, come down and save yourself. Human being couldn't do that, but he's God, he can. Instead, he chooses to experience the pain and suffering that humans can't escape, that he can. That is the ultimate temptation all the way through. Moses, Jesus, these stories are about God responding to pain and suffering. And in both times, he enters in. In Exodus, he came in his presence in cloud and fire and was with his people, guiding them, leading them. And in Matthew, Jesus becomes the new Moses, bringing his people back from exile, God with them, leading them from pain and suffering. See, the Gospels realize this, that in the presence of Jesus, there are 2 things side by side in the world: the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of darkness, sometimes referred to as the kingdom of this world. There's a corruption in the universe that causes pain and suffering. We call it sin. tell you this. If your mental picture of sin is the things you have done wrong, your picture of sin is way too small. So your Jesus is way too small. If Jesus is just about you and what you've done wrong, that is a very selfish view of sin and salvation. Colossians tells us that Jesus heals all the universe. He heals all things. He holds all things together in Colossians 1:15 through 21. Sin, something in sin broke the entire universe. This is the reality of why pain and suffering happens. Don't just think of sin in terms of an action you have taken that you now need to feel guilty for. We are so often the receivers of sin. Not just in terms of the actions of human beings such as Herod, but just in terms of living in a broken world. Sometimes bad stuff that causes pain and suffering just happens, and there's no one to blame other than just the reality that there's sin in the universe, and we hate it because we want someone to blame. But yet God enters into that pain and suffering. One of my pet peeves about Christmas, specifically how a lot of evangelical churches do Christmas. I've sat in Christmas services and I've been there and I'm all ready to think about the incarnation and God entering in. It's wonderful, and they go, this baby has come to die on a cross and rise again to newness of life. Like, wait, that's Easter. Yeah. They love jumping to Easter. And they love being able to go, he came so he died so that your sins can be forgiven and what you've done. And all. It misses so much of the beauty of what salvation really is. Misses this idea that there's this fight in the entire universe where sin and brokenness and pain and suffering wants to do one thing, and God is coming in, redeeming with his kingdom. And the whole direction of moving towards a great day in the great and glorious future when he returns and the pain and suffering is gone. When we skip to Easter and forget Christmas, we miss that we are to sit with the pain and hurt in the world too. We embrace Christmas, we embrace Christ more when we sit with people in their pain and hurt. This is one of the most simplest and also most difficult things about being a follower of Christ. We are called to be with people in pain, to help them bear their burdens. This is what it is to not just be biblical, but to be Christ-like. Because this is the whole ministry of Christ. We embrace Christmas more fully when we sit with the pain in the world. And it hurts to do it. It hurts to do it. Jesus didn't come and sit with us in our pain and get off scot-free. It hurt him. But this is the beauty that God is willing to do that. Pain and suffering happens. He hears the cry, and he comes in and responds. He comes, he's with us. He sends us people to be with us. So often when it comes to Christmas, people go, oh, that person just doesn't get the Christmas spirit. Oh, Christmas is hard for this person. So maybe we push them aside from Christmas celebrations, or we try and do stuff because it's happier over here. That's not what true Christmas is. True Christmas is entering in, being with us, being with others in the pain and suffering. We embrace Christmas more fully when we sit with the pain in the world. Okay, discussion time. Nice light topic for you all. Ah,